The idea of the trip came suddenly. Daniel Parker mentioned it one evening while clearing the dinner table, his voice casual, almost careless. He said they should go away for a few days, just the three of them, a family trip. Emily looked up from the sink, surprised by the timing more than the suggestion. They had not taken a real vacation together in years. Life had become busy, then distant, then quiet. Emily agreed without thinking too much. She told herself this was good. Maybe it was needed. 2 weeks later, they stood at the airport in Seattle waiting for their flight to Vancouver. The terminal was crowded, full of movement and sound, but Emily felt strangely apart from it all. Daniel stood a few steps away, scrolling through his phone, his face serious. Lucas, their 16-year-old son, leaned against his backpack, watching people pass with thoughtful eyes. Emily studied them both. Once Daniel would have been talking, joking, pointing out little details. Once Lucas would have been excited, asking questions about the trip. Now there was only polite quiet. They boarded the plane and took their seats. Emily sat by the window, Daniel in the middle, Lucas on the aisle. As the plane lifted into the sky, Emily watched the city grow smaller below. She felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Trips were supposed to bring people closer. But what if they only made distance clearer? Daniel barely spoke during the flight. When he did, his words were short and careful. Lucas listened more than he talked, his attention shifting between his parents. Emily noticed everything. She always had Dot at the hotel by the lake. The lobbies smelled of fresh wood and coffee. Large windows opened to a wide view of calm water and distant lights. It was beautiful, peaceful. Emily wanted to feel comforted, but something in her chest stayed tight. Their room was clean and bright. Lucas dropped his bag and went straight to the window, impressed by the view. Daniel checked his phone again. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly tired. That night they ate dinner at a nearby restaurant. The food was good, the service polite. Daniel talked about work. Lucas talked about school. Emily nodded and smiled at the right moments. No one argued. No one laughed much either, back in the room. Daniel fell asleep quickly, turning his back without thinking. Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. She remembered how things used to be. Late-night talks. Shared plans. A feeling of being chosen every day. She slipped out of bed and walked to the window. The lake reflected the city lights like broken stars. She pressed her forehead against the glass and breathed slowly. She did not want to cry. She was tired of tears that led nowhere. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Lucas standing near the door, unsure. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He shook his head and joined her by the window. They stood together, looking out in silence. "Mom," Lucas said after a moment, "do you think people change on purpose?" Emily looked at him, surprised by the question. His voice was calm, but his eyes were serious. "I think sometimes people don't notice they're changing," she said carefully. Lucas nodded, thinking. Or maybe they notice but don't know how to stop. Emily felt a small ache in her chest. She wanted to protect him, but she also knew he was no longer a child. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," he said quickly. Then, more slowly, "I just want us to be okay." Emily reached for his hand and squeezed it. "Me too." The next morning, Daniel woke early. He dressed quietly and said he had a work call that would take most of the day. He spoke like it was normal, like it didn't matter that they were on a family trip. Emily did not argue. She nodded and watched him leave. Lucas looked after his father, his expression unreadable. Emily and Lucas spent the day walking around the city. They visited small shops, shared snacks, watched street performers. Emily laughed more with her son than she had in months. Still, something felt unfinished, like a sentence waiting for its final word. Lucas asked careful questions. About her job. About how she felt living in the same house for so many years. Emily answered honestly, but gently. She avoided talking about Daniel. She wasn't ready by late afternoon. They returned to the hotel. Daniel was still gone. Lucas sat on the bed, restless. Emily noticed him checking his phone, then putting it away, then checking again, something on your mind?" she asked. Lucas looked at her, then away. Just thinking. Dinner that night was quieter than the first. Daniel returned just in time, apologizing quickly, saying the call had run long. He didn't meet Emily's eyes when he spoke. She felt the distance more clearly now. It was no longer invisible. It sat between them, heavy and real. After dinner, Daniel said he was tired and went to bed early. Emily stayed up, reading without really seeing the words. Lucas paced the room, then stopped. "Mom," he said softly, "can we walk outside tomorrow night?" Emily looked up. "Of course. Want to show you something," he added. She studied his face. He looked nervous but determined. "Okay," she said. Lucas nodded, relieved. But the tension did not leave him. That night, Emily dreamed of water rising quietly, filling rooms while no one noticed. She woke before morning, her heart racing. The next day passed slowly. Daniel stayed close this time, almost too close, as if trying to fix something without naming it. Emily felt tired of pretending. Lucas watched them both, silent and alert. As evening approached, Emily felt a strange sense of waiting. Something was coming. She didn't know what, but she felt it in her bones. When the sun began to set, Lucas stood and grabbed his jacket. "Now," he asked. Emily nodded. Daniel hesitated. "I'll come too." Lucas looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Yeah, you should." They walked toward the lake, the air cool and calm. The water was smooth, reflecting the fading light. People passed them, laughing, unaware of the tension wrapped around this small family. They stopped near a quiet cafe. Lucas took a deep breath. Emily felt her heart tighten. The trip had been called a reset. A chance. A beginning. But as Lucas turned to face them, Emily realized it might be something else entirely, and whatever her son was about to say changed the meaning of this trip forever. The sun had dipped low over the Vancouver skyline, painting the lake in shades of gold and orange. Emily, Daniel, and Lucas walked slowly along the quiet pathway by the water. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint smell of coffee from the nearby cafe and the distant sound of soft laughter from other visitors. Emily's mind raced, though she kept her expression calm. She sensed something in Lucas's movements, hesitation, purpose, a weight heavier than his 16 years should bear. Lucas stopped near a bench under a tall maple tree. He looked at both of them, his chest rising and falling quickly, as if he had rehearsed what he was about to say over and over in his head. Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had a feeling this was not just a casual moment, but something that would mark the rest of their lives. She could feel Daniel stiffen beside her, and the tension in his shoulders betrayed a worry he couldn't hide. "Mom, Dad," Lucas began, his voice trembling slightly, but steady enough to command attention. "I need to tell you something. Something I've been keeping to myself because I didn't know how to say it." His eyes darted between his mother and father, finally settling on Daniel. "Dad, I saw you. At home. With someone else." Emily felt the words pierce her like sudden cold air. She stopped walking, gripping the edge of the bench for support. Her stomach sank, and a tight knot formed in her chest. She had feared it, suspected it, but hearing it spoken aloud made the reality undeniable. She turned slowly to Daniel, who looked away, guilt written clearly across his face. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the quiet hum of the city and the gentle ripples of the lake filled the space around them. Daniel's face paled. His lips parted, then closed, as if he struggled to find words. "Lucas, Emily," he started, his voice low, hesitant. "I never wanted you to find out this way. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." His gaze dropped to the ground. "I made a mistake. I let myself drift." His hands shook slightly. "I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, especially you, Emily." Emily stared at him, her heart heavy with a mix of sorrow, disbelief, and quiet anger. She wanted to ask so many questions, but words seemed to fail her. Instead, she let her eyes meet Lucas, whose young face showed maturity far beyond his age. He had carried this secret alone for months, and now he had found the courage to speak. Emily felt a surge of pride and heartbreak at the same time. Lucas took a step closer to them, his small frame firm with determination. "Mom, you deserve honesty. I deserve honesty. And Dad, you need to be honest, too." His voice was calm, yet it carried an emotional weight that made Emily's chest tighten. "I saw the texts, the messages, the moments you tried to hide. And I didn't know how to tell you. But keeping it a secret isn't helping anyone." Emily sank slowly onto the bench, wrapping her arms around herself. The cool evening air couldn't touch the chill of betrayal that crept through her. Daniel knelt beside her, hesitant, unsure where to start. His admission came in fragmented words, each one dripping with regret. He explained that he had started an emotional connection with someone else when he felt unseen and lonely. It had begun innocently, he said, with shared jokes and late-night texts. But slowly it had grown into something he didn't know how to stop. Emily listened in silence. She had imagined confrontation many times over the years, but nothing prepared her for this moment. She felt anger, yes, but it was tempered by exhaustion. She had loved him for so long, trusted him for so long. And now the foundation of their marriage seemed to shift beneath her feet. Her mind replayed years of moments where she had hoped for connection, where small signs of distance had been ignored. And yet, despite it all, she felt a strange clarity that came from finally knowing the truth. Lucas shifted his weight nervously, glancing between them. "I didn't want to ruin the trip," he said softly, "but I can't pretend it didn't happen. We can't fix what we can't see clearly." His voice was steady, but a tremor betrayed his worry. I want us to be real. All of us." Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, Lucas, and you're right. I've failed in many ways, and I can't erase that. But I want to try if Emily will let me. If we can figure out a way forward, together." He looked at Emily, his eyes full of regret and a flicker of hope. "I can't promise it will be easy. I can't promise it will be perfect. But I promise honesty from now on." Emily didn't speak immediately. The wind rustled the leaves above them, and the water reflected the fading sunlight in long, golden streaks. She thought about love, not the kind that begins with passion or excitement, but the kind that survives truth, betrayal, and the difficult work of understanding one another. She thought about the years they had shared, the life they had built, and the child who now stood before them, braver than either of his parents in some ways. Finally, she exhaled slowly. "I don't know if we can fix everything," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can forgive fully, or even what that forgiveness would look like. But I know this. We cannot move forward without truth. And that starts here, tonight, with honesty." Lucas smiled faintly, relief and hope flickering across his face. "That's all I wanted," he said. "Just the truth." They sat together on the bench, the three of them wrapped in an uneasy silence. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't resolution. But it was real. And for the first time in months, Emily felt a small seed of something she hadn't felt in a long while: clarity. A chance to see their lives as they were, without pretenses. Daniel reached out slowly and placed his hand on Emily's shoulder. She did not move away. She let him, not because the pain was gone, but because the moment required courage. Courage to face the past, courage to see their failures, and courage to imagine a future that might still hold love. Lucas leaned against Emily's side, tired from carrying burdens too heavy for his age, yet proud for having spoken the truth. Emily could feel the warmth of his presence, the steady heartbeat of her child who had forced honesty upon them all. She realized, painfully, that sometimes the bravest voice in a family does not belong to the adults, but to the child who refuses to accept lies. As the night deepened, the lake mirrored the stars above, calm and reflective. Emily, Daniel, and Lucas walked back to the hotel side by side, but not yet together in heart. The trip, meant to be a reset, had instead become a revelation. It had shown them the cracks in their family, the shadows they could no longer ignore, and the possibility of beginning again if they chose honesty and patience. That night, Emily lay awake again, but this time her thoughts were quieter, sharper. She thought about love, about mistakes, about the bravery it took to admit them. She thought about her son, who had surprised her with truth. She thought about Daniel, who had finally confronted his own choices. She thought about herself, the woman who had loved, endured, and now faced a future uncertain but truthful. The trip was no longer just a vacation. It was a turning point. And Emily understood with a painful clarity that sometimes the hardest journeys are not the ones you take across cities or lakes, but the journeys into the truth of your own life. Morning would bring decisions, conversations, healing perhaps. But for tonight, they had each other, a fragile honesty, and the first glimmer of a path forward. And that, Emily realized, was more than she had dared to hope for at the start of the trip.